What's Your Work Fit is sponsored by Hudson Davis. Start your brand's marketing and communications journey today at hudsondaviscommunications.com. I'm Dan Smolin. I built a successful executive career in marketing and communications before becoming a top headhunter and founding my own executive search firm. Now get this, every day, mainstream media runs stories in which old school bosses and thought leaders frame your work and workplace issues in ways that are often divisive and unmeaningful. And that's just crazy. The time has come for you to answer the question, what's your work fit? So that your work and career fit who you are, how you want to live, and what you want your lasting contributions to be. What's your work fit? It answers your questions and tackles the issues that keep you up at night about advancing your career in this time of workplace revolution. So let's get started. Hey, happy August, everyone. Dan Smolin here from What's Your Work Fit? Oh gosh, can you believe it's August? Hey, I don't know about you, but I want a July redo. It wasn't long enough, and I'm not ready for September, even though fall is my favorite season. How do you feel about this? Do you want a longer summer? I would imagine many of you do. Okay, you know my ask. If you submit a future show question to us and we pick it, I will gladly send you this wonderful What's Your Work Fit baseball cap. It's our way of saying thanks to viewers of the show who submit questions that become actual topics for future What's Your Work Fit episodes. And here's the thing, that's what drives the What's Your Work Fit experience. It's what I call the fever dreams that keep us up at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, dealing with the work that we do and want to do, and creating workplace situations in which work is a wonderful part of a day, doing other wonderful things, and not the all-consuming time suck of a day. So, if you are so inspired, keep a pen and notepad by your bedside so that you can capture those questions that you have about the work that you do, and we'll send you this cap if we choose that question for a future What's Your Work Fit episode. Okay, enough about the shameless self-promotion of the show. Let's get to our guest. She is Cristina DiGiacomo. Hello, Cristina from New York City.
Hello.
Let me introduce you.
Cristina. So happy to be here.
Cristina is an organizational change expert and a practical philosopher who provides CEOs and entrepreneurs with guided spaces for deeper thinking, which is pretty trippy. With Cristina's help, they motivate themselves to achieve greater success with direction and determination. Hey, Cristina.
Hi, Dan. Hi, everyone out there. I'm so happy to be here. Sorry, I got really enthusiastic.
Hey, I got enthusiastic too. You're like one of my favorite people and a great guest. You were on our old audio podcast, and I've been dying to get you back on. Before we get to our viewer question, I'm wondering if you could explain the why of the work that you do, and especially what is practical philosophy in its application to people who work and the workplace.
Sure. So practical philosophy essentially is just the discipline of using philosophy in everyday life. So that's the essential definition of it. And we know that work is a part of everyday life. Mm-hmm. So what I do and what I espouse is that practical philosophy exists in our everyday working life. When we have to think about how we think about work, that's philosophy. When we have to go through a decision-making process about what we're doing at work, philosophy comes into play. When we have to interact with other people and think about how that's going.
Right.
That is philosophy at play. When organizations have to think about how they engage with the marketplace, how they engage with society, that's philosophy at play. There's so many amazing working surfaces uh, for philosophy to actually help and support how work enjoins with human beings and also society, and also within itself, where philosophy can really be a guiding force
Right.
for those factors and for those things in contemporary workplace culture.
Now, to my audience, you will understand why we brought Cristina on in a moment, because I'm about to provide you all with the question of the week, which was submitted by Benno. Hey, Benno, thank you for submitting your question. Um, Here's a little bit about Benno. Benno is a senior team leader for a major insurance company, and he freely admits that he was not the best student of philosophy in college and did everything he could to avoid Philosophy 101, which was one of the handful of elective courses available to him at his state university. Hey, I get that, Benno. So, years later, he's done very well in his career and is currently leading a team of about 20 mid level managers. The work is very challenging, and the demands on his team from people up on high in the C suite can feel unrelenting. So Benno's run out of his bag of tricks, especially sports metaphors, to keep his team inspired, engaged, and happy. So in a hat tip to the philosophy course that he avoided in college, Benno now asks you, Christina, how can I give sage advice to my direct reports?
Well, first of all,
You like
um,
Socrates on the table there?
oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Um, First of all, I just want to give Benno a huge hug.
Yeah.
I love this question. And I want Benno to know that he's already a sage.
Ooh,
The
why?
fact that he's even asking this question
Hmm.
means he's a sage. The
Now,
fact
why is that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. First, he cares enough to ask the question.
Mhm.
He's aware enough that there's a question there. He's sensitive enough to allow the question to arise. He has a virtue of courage, an Aristotelian virtue of courage to even vocalize the question, to seek an answer.
Mhm.
And so Benno's already on his way. Like so I think Benno needs to have already the mindset that he is the sage. And I believe he mentioned in his question that he does have experience. And um, that also, in and of itself, makes him a sage
Mm.
because it's one thing to have knowledge of something, and quite a totally different thing to have the experience of it. So, what makes someone a sage is not necessarily, a beardy dude sitting on a mountain. That what practical philosophy is all about is the fact that you've had the experience of something, and
Mm.
that that's already that lesson and that knowledge and that awareness is already embodied. And so Benno,
Mhm.
believe it or not, whether he realizes it or not, his bag of tricks, I guarantee, if I were to sit down with Benno, his bag of tricks is infinite.
Wow.
Because if he were to mine his his experiences in his career and in his life and in his observations. He has uh, no end to his bag of tricks in terms of the advice that he could give other people. So those are the things that immediately strike me on Benno's question, and certainly more to come in terms of my answer.
So Tom Langtree, who's a regular viewer of the show, hey Tom, he says philosophy is a counterbalance to the sports metaphor, since the latter is all about winning and philosophy calls for consideration and alternatives for better outcomes. How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, I definitely can understand um, how that can seem.
Mm-hmm.
However, if we really look deeper into the discipline that goes into pursuing uh, a sport
Mm-hmm.
from the athlete's perspective, I definitely see where Tom is coming from, perhaps from the entertainment or from the viewer perspective, or from that sort of, you know, uh, winning philosophy mindset. But if you can maybe expand the scope of sports as a discipline for the athlete, I
Uh-huh.
mean, the Greeks created the Olympics.
That's right.
So, there was certainly a pursuit of greatness embedded in sports. And when you take on the discipline of achievement at that level, there's a lot of mental uh, capacity that goes into that discipline. And that also is where philosophy comes into play. You have to make those considerations every day about whether you're going to hit that pavement and go for that run. It is a mental war versus just a physical one. And a lot of philosophers, especially the Stoics, also talked about um, having winning over that circular thinking, and having control over your thoughts to be able to work through uh, and be able to exist in the world physically. So even the Stoics um, could contribute some philosophy from, into the sports, into the sports arena. So
Mm,
I don't necessarily think that sports is absent philosophy. I think there's a rich territory for philosophy.
right. So Maddie P says, how do I bring philosophy into my workplace without sounding all high and mighty? I want to inspire through leadership, not scare people half to death.
Oh, absolutely. I don't want you to sound high and mighty either, Maddie P. You'd be bringing philosophy a really bad name, so don't do that.
Right.
Um, so, Maddie, one of the best ways is to be the example.
Mm-hmm.
So, study this stuff on your be the student. Be your own inspiration, right? Um, exactly what you say. I want to inspire through leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
So be the message. Allow it to work through you completely. uh you know um Make philosophy a way of life for you, in how you carry yourself, in how you are intentional with your words, in how you are compassionate and respectful when you're working with other people, in how you are sort of thoughtful in crazy situations, and not reactive. Like, there's so many ways in how You can learn about philosophy, even simple things,
Yeah.
and allow that to work through you. And I am telling you, people will notice, people will feel that, because we're all human beings
Right.
and we pick up on those things, and they may not understand or know. And we, you certainly don't want to be like, I'm a, I have this philosophy badge, and
Yeah.
exactly, you don't want to be high and mighty. So don't, just let it work through you, and people will notice. And that's what happened to me when I started studying philosophy and applying it in my career. Things started to happen.
Can you talk
And
about that a little bit? Because you
yeah,
came out of an agency experience like me, as I recall. So talk about the practical impact that it had on you.
I think I knew something was going on when I had an employee who was moving.
Hmm.
She was making a life change and was leaving. I was working at the New York Times at the time, and she was leaving. And she came up to me uh, shortly before her last day, and um, we were sitting down, and she looked at me and she said, "I want you to know something." And I said, "What?" She said, "You were the best boss I ever had."
Oh my.
And
Nice.
I've had a 20-year corporate career.
Hmm.
First of all, I had many bosses, and I've had some good ones.
Hmm.
Even with the good ones, I never said you were the best boss I ever had.
Wow.
And so I know, like, what it takes to even express something like that, let alone to be the kind of person to actually achieve like that level of um accolade. And I had at the time been studying and using philosophy as a manager, in how I dealt with my direct reports, and
Hmm.
how I was generating new ideas and shepherding them up the ladder, in how I was like seeing, like trying to see the big picture about things. Um, for about 6 years, it wasn't really a long time. um I was taking classes and like really applying this stuff. So for me, that was the moment that I was like, wow, this stuff. And so that's how I can answer that.
That's yeah, that ought to be a life altering experience for you to get that affirmation from somebody that you cared very deeply about, but just also happened to be a direct report of yours.
Yeah, it was
So,
it was really truly like, I've gotten awards. I've gotten
mhm,
New York Times Publishing awards. I was
mm,
shortlisted for a Cannes Cyber Lion. I've gotten all kinds of awards in my career. Nothing, nothing means anything, but that moment to me was the biggest award I could have ever gotten in my career.
I would imagine because you realize you made a positive difference in this person's life. Would that
Yeah,
be would
to
that be
get a
fair?
best boss ever
Yeah.
award. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, absolutely.
I want to bring up Ann Barr Thompson's comment. She says, sage advice comes from being yourself, doing your best to listen and understand other people's perspectives and circumstances. So let's talk about authenticity. Um, I remember, I when my wife and I used to go to shopping malls, and there would be that store that did framing, and usually they made their most money on the daily affirmations thing, the big poster with the with the corny saying on it, and of course, half your people in the workplace had those on their office walls, and it was like, okay, what does that mean? So let's talk about the authenticity of practical philosophy. Why is it important?
So Well, the authenticity of practical philosophy is kind of interesting in the sense, I mean, I think the way people are engaging with the idea of authenticity in
Mm-hmm.
general, I think there's just, so I want to start with that.
Okay.
Okay. Um, I think there's a genuine desire for people to drop the personality, meaning for people to drop the avatar that they need to create when they go into work. And for a lot of people, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to create that mask, to create that other person. You know, people have talked a lot about I have my work self and I have my personal self.
Right.
That's how you know that there's like almost for some people literally a double life. And I believe there's even an Apple TV, Apple Plus television show called Severance,
Oh my God, my favorite.
right?
Uh,
Where I haven't actually seen the show, but I understand the premise of it is there's literally two lives, right?
I don't
And
want to spoil it for
don't
you,
spoil it. Don't
but
you
it will astonish you
dare.
because the idea of severance is quite literal. You walk through this thing and you don't have consciousness of what your life is outside the building and vice versa.
Right. Well, so again, it's a metaphor for these the in essence this sort of schism that we've created with in partnership with our egos
Mm-hmm.
uh, around our work. Now, some of it is protectionary
Yes.
because some of us work in very intense environments where we need to come up with coping mechanisms and protectionary personalities in order to keep our authentic selves or keep our personal selves protected,
Right.
because our personal selves may be, you know, sensitive or fragile or, you know, under duress because we've got stuff going on in our personal lives. So I bring all of this to the forefront because there's this other narrative going on around be yourself or bring
Mm-hmm.
your whole self to work. And I still don't believe in, I think that's a load of BS, because the only people who bring their whole selves to work that I've seen uh, are the jerks, are the people who you don't want bringing their whole selves to work. It's still the sensitive people and the compassionate and kind people who still feel like they need to protect themselves. So, authenticity, I think, is something that we pay a lot of lip service to, but aren't doing enough of to foster in the workplace. And maybe that's okay,
Right.
because I think that our authentic selves or our personal selves may be maybe a little raw, or, you know, again, everybody's different and everyone's personal situation is different, but maybe a little bit haven't gotten the calluses, our authentic selves haven't quite gotten the calluses to actually be fully brought to work.
But you could still be but both things can be true.
Yes.
You can be the person you are um, at home, who's unfiltered, and you could be equally authentic in your other persona at work, who may be a little cheeky but has enough sense not to punch, not to poke the bear, if you will.
Very true if you are witty.
Right.
But that's another Aristotelian virtue, is wittiness. There's wittiness and friendliness, right?
Right.
But, you know, a lot of people struggle with authenticity because who we really are if we're talking about Advaita, Indian philosophy, Advaita philosophy tells us that we are truth, consciousness, and bliss.
Oh, I like the bliss part.
Yes. So let's just say we go into work and we're like, I'm truth. Okay. Meaning I'm 100% going to tell the truth of everything that's going on here.
Right.
See how that goes.
Right.
I'm consciousness, meaning I'm 100% aware of everything that's going on here.
Right.
Okay. That might actually be helpful. And I'm bliss, meaning everything is okay. I'm rolling, I'm going with the flow. Might be all right. But for the most part, for a lot of people, that's, get really freaked out about that because they're freaked out all the time and they get freaked out if you're not freaked out. Right.
Right.
So there's a philosophical problem with us being who we really are at work. And that's what I'm trying to get us and companies to understand, that we have a real problem. People are still having a work self and a personal self.
I guess where I was going at with that, Christina, is that I remember back in the day when I was sitting behind a desk in a corporate setting that the work persona often had more to do with what others wanted that persona to be.
Yeah.
You put on a mask and maybe it fit, but oftentimes it didn't. And I'll tell you, and this will be a segue into my next point about when the practical philosophy is neither practical nor philosophic and can blow up. That sometimes when people think you're a hard driver and you must be because you're working 80 hours a week, which I did, that everything's fine with you, which it usually wasn't. At the end of the week, I would collapse and not really have a restful experience, but I would gain enough energy to get back and rinse and repeat for the following week. So let me tell you about what happened to me. This is going back many, many years ago. I was in a role which was called marketing operations. You took the things that marketing had to do and you operationalized them. And it involved data processing and data merging and scrubbing and direct mail pieces and stuff like that. And I had this situation where somebody who was an out of the building acquaintance of mine, we didn't actually work together. He was a vendor of mine, but I knew him, during my off work hours. And he happened to pick up an assignment doing a fairly sophisticated piece of data processing for me, for which I had created a voluminous structure of instructions and exceptions, and you had to follow along. Well, it went horribly wrong. It's almost like they took the instructions and inverted them. So that the people that shouldn't have been mailed this important mail piece got it, and the people that should have gotten it never saw it. So I'm flop sweating because this is I didn't catch this, and I should have. So what ended up happening is the person said to me, he goes, I want to quote from Animal House. You can spend your whole life worrying about your mistakes, right? I looked at him and I said, yeah, I know that quote, but do you know what comes after that quotation? And he goes, I don't know. I just think it will help you that, get on with your life. Don't fret about this. I said, so, okay, this is the whole thread. You can spend your life worrying about your mistakes, but here's the thing. You effed up. You trusted us is what follows. Now, for aficionados of Animal House, you know that Otter was the person who said that, and this was right before Flounder's brothers Lincoln Continental is about to be torn up and be turned into the Deathmobile. So my friend meant well, but this made things worse because he made me realize, yeah, I trusted you. I effed up and I trusted you. How do we, Christina, how do we counsel people to be very careful with their philosophical approach so that they don't unintentionally let it boomerang back in their faces?
You can't. You can't control what other people say or do.
Right?
So, you know, if you spend your time thinking about how other people step into their own folly, like, you spend less time working on yourself. You spend less time thinking about or mapping out how to live your life well. That's why most of philosophy talks about focus on what you can control,
Right.
because most philosophers wanted you to have a good life.
Right.
And for them, the key to happiness was forget about what everybody else is doing.
Right.
Try, just focus on, you can't control that. Just focus on what you can control, which is your reactions, the choices that you make, the steps that you take, you know, and the reason for that is that in for a lot of philosophers, you were for the most part in control of your own destiny. There were a lot of philosophers who were like, what about fate and
Yeah.
destiny? And is that already laid out for you? And it's a lot of theoretical stuff. But from a practical perspective, it's like, I have a mug here. If I let this go, I'm in control of whether I continue to hold this or not.
Right.
So that dude was trying to help you. He was trying to help you feel better about something that terrible that happened.
Right.
Just take the intention with grace, and forget about the rest. Whether he quoted terribly,
Yeah.
or I call it taking the nectar from poison.
Oh my God, that's wonderful. And
So
old 30-year-old flop sweating neurotic me thanks you for that, Cristina
yeah,
DiGiacomo. Hey, before we get to our final question, I want to give you an opportunity to point our viewers and listeners to your social media so that they can connect with you and learn more about you. Where can they find you?
I just really point everyone to my LinkedIn page. That just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Okay, here we go. This is what we've been waiting for all day, and that's to ask you, what's your work fit? What attribute, condition, experience, place, or state of mind makes work a wonderful part of your day, doing many wonderful and meaningful things, and not the all consuming time suck of a day? Cristina DiGiacomo, what's your work fit?
So I would say everything is temporary.
Ooh, explain that.
So, when I'm like feeling, whether it's like feeling stuck, or whether it's feeling overwhelmed, or whether it's feeling like dissatisfied, again, it's the nectar from poison, right? But I also think to myself, well, this is temporary. I'm playing a long game here.
Oh, I like that.
And if I were to, and then what I also do is I kind of take a step back and say, okay, in this moment right here, with whatever it is that I'm feeling, when I take a step back, when I zoom out at all of the things that I've done, all of my experiences, I'm looking at you, Benno, like all of my bag of tricks, all of my experiences. Wow, look at this incredible body of work. Is this one moment really going to, like, I mean, is this really the moment that I'm going to let hang me up? Like, is this going to be the moment that's going to derail like everything that I've accomplished? No. What can I learn from this moment? What's the nectar from poison in this moment? But it's going to pass. It's temporary. And in the grand scheme of things, it's going to just be a moment in this larger story and larger body of work that I'm still continuing to weave. I'm still continuing to create. So that's kind of what I tell myself in those moments.
I love learning from the nectar of poison. I'm going to have that in my follow up post about our show with you today, Cristina DiGiacomo. Thank you so much for being on. You are an absolute delight, and I hope we can have you back on at a future point.
Anytime. Thank you, everyone.